Hey guys, it is NCS Fan 001 here, and we're now on to part number 4 of our all-trophy playthrough of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 from 2022. Anyway, right now in the background you were seeing the first trophy unlock. This one was just for obtaining just a single star in the Spec Ops mode. So I just did that randomly with other random players on maybe my first attempt at the denied area mission. So, I have some bad news about this video. For some unknown reason, every possible thing that can go wrong for me while playing Modern Warfare 2 2022 manages to do so. I have no idea why this game hates me so much, but literally every possible thing that can go wrong while going for trophies in this game manages to go wrong. And what happened here was, for some reason, the audio did not record for any of the missions that I did in Spec Ops. I don't know if it had something to do with the fact that I was talking to someone on a mic, but that shouldn't have been a problem because I don't think that's ever been a problem before. So I legitimately have no idea why this game can't just give me a break every now and then. So because of that, I'm just going to try to do some post commentary here and tell you guys what was sort of happening with these missions. I have no idea why that had to happen. Like I've said before, this game just hates me for some reason. And the experience of trying to get a partner to do this co-op stuff with was also really terrible, because the first couple of people that I tried to recruit for this, I got them on PSN profiles. I had a boosting group there, and the first couple of people I tried to recruit just would join, and then they just left. So I never even got to work on it with them. Then I got somebody who I tried to get in contact with, but when I was trying to play with him, he just went and did it all himself instead of waiting to work on it with me. So that was wonderful. He took up the spot in there. So that was just great. That was a nice waste of my time. And then the next person I tried to get, he was more communicative, but he was from another country somewhere in the EU. And then it became just impossible because I had specifically said in my boosting session that I wanted someone in the US that could work in the same time zones as me. And of course that didn't work out. Thankfully though, I got this guy right here. I believe his name was Lithium Lemon, so huge shout out to him for coming in and joining me to play through this game. We knocked out all the trophies in one night. It took about 3 hours or so. Most of the co-op trophies are not really that hard, but there is one specifically that we will get to here in a little while that was by far the worst. So now I can actually get to talking about the actual missions here. The first one, oh, actually, here's a pretty funny moment. Yeah, that helicopter straight up just flew into the tree and blew itself up. I've never seen that happen before, but that was kind of hilarious. That made me think that maybe we were going to be off to a good night here with this game, but we definitely were not. I wish I had known that the audio was going to break on me, because that would have been kind of nice to know. But the objective for Denied Area is you have to take out a SAM site, then you have to get in a vehicle and drive pretty far away to get to the remaining SAM sites. So I don't know, some parts of this are probably going to be sped up or even a bit cut out at times just because there's no audio, so it's not going to be quite as interesting. But basically your main goal on this mission is to destroy all the SAM sites. Now for the trophies, you have to get 3 stars on each of the 3 original Spec Ops missions. For this one, your time limit is, I believe, 16 minutes. Yeah, this one it's 16 minutes, and low profile it's 15, and Defender Mount Zaya has a different requirement altogether. So the time limit is actually not all that bad, I will say. It could have been a lot worse than it was. So here I'm probably just going to speed things up or skip ahead until we get to the actual first objective here. So we're at our first objective here. Like I said, you have to clear out each of the SAM sites. Well, you don't technically have to clear them out, you just have to blow up the actual SAM sites themselves. So we're headed into here, and there are quite a few enemies here, so I believe we both end up dying right around here, so I'm down, and I think he's going to go down in just a moment. Now, when you go down, the timer does not reset on these missions. So if you go down, the timer will continue to count, but there is actually a bit of an advantage to dying in both this mission and low profile. While the timer does not stop, it actually removes all the enemies for whatever reason, which makes it much easier to get out of the area that you're in. It just despawns all the enemies. I don't know if it's a bug or if it was intentional game design. So that is actually really, really helpful. So I will be back just as soon as we get back to where I just was. Okay, so we went for the objective on the right first, and we're just going to drive right on up pretty close to the objective through all the gunfire and the grenades going off. And basically our only purpose here is to plant the explosive, wait for it to go off, and then we let ourselves die because when we respawn, yes, a little bit of time will have elapsed, but we will actually despawn all of the enemies. Again, it's a wonderful tactic. I don't know if it was a bug in the game or if it was something done intentionally, but I'm going to go ahead and kill myself right here, and I think he had already downed himself. So we're at 8.5 minutes right now, which is plenty of time, and as you can see, when we respawn, we can pick up all the ammo we need, and then we just head off to the next area with all the enemies gone. So great tactic, highly recommend. So I'll be back with you guys as soon as we get to the second objective. And it's also highly recommended that at some point you pick up a rocket launcher. You can get them at some of these armories because you're going to be fighting off several helicopters throughout this mission. You're going to fight 2 or 3 of them. And if you have the rocket launcher, you just need to hit them twice with it, and you'll kill them because they'll pop flares the first time. And at one point, he picked up a grenade launcher, and apparently the grenade launcher can be used to blow up the SAM sites. I did not know that was a tactic, but it is, so that actually made our lives quite a bit easier. So we're both going to go down here, or I'm going to try to down myself, but I think my Simtex probably killed the enemies near me, plus I have full body armor. If you have to actually run up to the SAM sites, as long as you have body armor, you should be fine. We do take out a second helicopter here, one that's flying around and doing quite a bit of damage to the vehicle. And now we approach the third objective. So I think he may have run out of grenade launcher shots here at one point, and we just ended up... I can't remember if he had to plant it or not. I don't think he did, actually. He may have had just enough grenade launcher shots. I threw a grenade as well. I guess it probably didn't do anything. Maybe it killed a couple enemies, but I was probably trying to hit it. So at some point, he did manage to blow it up with like whatever ammo we had left. So at this point, all you have left to do is you have to reach an extraction point. So we're just going to down ourselves one more time here. And at this point, we had just under 4 minutes left, which is more than enough time if you know where to go. So we get into this armored vehicle this time, which is highly recommended. And as you can see, once again, all the enemies despawn. Fantastic tactic to use here. And at some point, another enemy attack helicopter shows up, so we shoot at it once. It's always going to pop flares the first time. Reload the missile launcher and shoot it a second time as it's firing at us. So it does do some damage to the vehicle, does some damage to the front of it especially, but we are able to shoot it down. So now the objective is going to update. We now have 4 minutes to reach our extraction point, which is achieved by driving into the back of this plane. So pretty fun moment, definitely a bit of a callback to that one mission from Modern Warfare 2, the original Modern Warfare 2, you know, the good Modern Warfare 2, because I was not a big fan of this Spec Ops mode. It's nowhere near as fun as the original version was back in the original version of the game. But hey, we did complete this first mission. We're going to get 3 stars here. We did it with a couple of minutes to spare. So nothing too bad here. This is one of the easier missions overall. So there's our 3 stars, and we completed it with 2.5 minutes left, so plenty of time. We are off to our second mission, Defender Mount Zaya. So this mission is a little bit different because, unlike the first one, we're not actually focused on completing this one quickly. Instead, our goal is to complete it without letting the enemies plant more than 3 explosives. So as we start out here, I'm probably going to skip through this intro cutscene because it's kind of pointless. Alright, so as we land here, we go over to this little armory room. And the guide I was following on PSN Profiles suggested grabbing the M4 as one of your weapons. And you're going to see here that I also pick up an RPG. That is kind of useful. It's not, you know, anything groundbreaking. in my opinion. It does help at times with some of the vehicles that you'll fight, but it's also not the most powerful weapon in the world. So from this point, our first objective is to defuse a bomb that's pretty much already planted. As far as I know, this one is unavoidable, but it actually does not count against you, because to get 3 stars, they can only plant 3 bombs, and they did plant 3 other bombs, but this one apparently doesn't count, so that's good. So we're going to just clear out this bunker here. And let's see, I think he's the one that diffuses it, and we were at that point contemplating whether or not that would, cause us to fail the objective or anything, but thankfully it didn't cause us any problems. So the first wave is going to be simple enough. You only have to defend one position, so you shouldn't have to worry about anyone getting a bomb planted here. They can be kind of sneaky. They can just jump over the walls and just quickly plant it anywhere within the circle that you can see on the map. Because if you look at the map, you're going to see sort of a blue circle around the objective, and they can plant the bomb pretty much anywhere in there. And you can also see that the RPGs just are not really all that useful overall. They can kill a few enemies, but it usually takes multiple shots to actually bring down a vehicle. I mean, the multi-kills are nice, but that's really about it. So this first round, there's nothing really special about it. It's just enemies. So basically, you just have to kill the enemies, not get run over by that truck, which I did shoot, and again, it just killed a couple enemies. It didn't really blow it up or do anything else like that. So the first round is pretty self-explanatory. Just defend this one position. There's nothing else that's going to come in and cause any major problems. So I'm just going to skip ahead to the end of this round because it's the simplest. Alright, so at this point, the first wave has concluded. You have to hold out against 6 total waves of enemies, which doesn't seem like a lot, but given that you're only allowed to have 3 bombs get planted, it is a little bit strict. So I run back to pick up some ammo. You're going to need quite a bit of ammo throughout this. And you're also going to see that there's a little purchase station over here, and this is where I'm going to end up purchasing a couple of sentry guns. You do want to make sure you have some sentry guns for the later waves. A self-revive is also quite helpful since you're going to be split up in the later waves. But wave number 2 is mostly just more of the same. It's just a single point that we have to defend. I do think they ended up getting a bomb planted here just out of carelessness or me not realizing that they could plant it here. But you also are going to have 1 close air support to deal with on this mission. That means 1 helicopter flying around with some reinforcements inside of it. That is the last thing we took out. It doesn't seem to have any missiles or anything on it, so it's not really that big of a deal. But it is going to fly around and can potentially cause problems because the enemies sitting up there can do some damage to you. So at one point they actually started coming in behind us, and thankfully the map is really nice because it actually shows you exactly where all the enemies are coming from. So they almost downed me right here, but I was able to get rid of the ones that kept coming through the door. Thankfully there's not a ton of enemies on this wave either, just as long as you don't get killed by the helicopter that's flying around. And my partner did go down here, but I was able to revive him here in a moment. I don't think they planted bombs on this wave. I think it was the next wave where they actually managed to plant one for the first time. It may have been the wave even after that. So at this point, all remaining enemies were in the helicopter, which counts as the close air support as well. So we just had to shoot down the helicopter. This took a little while of just firing machine gun shots at it. I think I was going to try to use the grenade launcher on it or the RPG on it, but I probably was never going to hit it. So we just end up shooting it down here in a moment. And there it goes. So that is it for wave number 2. So after each wave, just make sure you go and grab ammunition and pick up any purchasable items that you may want. Alright, so we're now on to wave number 3, and once again, only 1 point is going to come under attack. This time it's point A, which is the one that was in that little bunker type room from earlier. Of course, this map is taken from Modern Warfare 3. I don't actually remember what it was called in Modern Warfare 3, but it's definitely the same map that we saw in that game's multiplayer, the one with the giant dome on it. That might have actually been its name, but I'm not really sure because it's been so many years since I've played the original Modern Warfare 3. So this time, a bunch of enemies were dropping in sort of behind me, and this map also has suicide bombers on this particular round. So on this round, you do have to be kind of careful. These suicide bombers are going to run up. They can do a ton of damage to you if you aren't careful. I didn't actually realize that's what we were fighting here, but I realized pretty quickly when that first one nearly exploded on me. So for the most part, this wave isn't really all that difficult because it's mostly just regular enemies and a few suicide bombers. But eventually, we realized that they actually managed to plant the bomb on A. So, like I was saying before, they're pretty sneaky. They can run in behind you and just plant the bomb or just focus on planting the bomb instead of actually, killing you. And unfortunately, nowhere in the stats does it tell you how many bombs were planted until the round is over or until the actual entire game is over. So that's kind of unfortunate. So we were kind of worried that it might have ended up counting against us that very first one, but it ended up not because they plant 2 more bombs and we still didn't fail the 3-star run, so that was good. So with round 3 over, we're just over halfway there, but we still have some much tougher waves to go. So it is now round number 4 of 6. So for the first time now, we're going to have enemies attacking 2 different points at once. So in this case, I'm guarding the one that I'm currently standing at, and he's guarding the other one. So you're going to want to definitely divide and conquer here, send, one player to one player to the other. Having a sentry gun here is definitely helpful. You're going to want to have your first one popped here, but you can always buy more for later rounds. Now, the gimmick this round is that we have these mortar launchers out here, and they're not too bad if you can get rid of them quickly, but they seem to have respawning enemies, sort of, or they don't necessarily disappear immediately because I think that enemies from other parts of the map can run over and use it. So at this point, I decided to take a bit of a detour from guarding my point and went and killed a couple of enemies on a mortar launcher up on that hill. And that ended wave 4, so it must have been wave 5 where they managed to plant the second bomb, because I know they planted one on the final round. So at this point, we're doing fairly well. 4 out of 6 rounds completed. We still have plenty of equipment that we can use. Got past the mortars, but again, the rounds are going to continue getting tougher from here. And this is where my partner had me pick up a self-revive because I actually didn't have one and for some reason didn't think about having one earlier. You definitely want to have this, especially for the final wave when you're going to be running between 3 different defensive points at the same time. I also picked up some body armor. So wave 5 is more of wave 4. It's going to be 2 points to defend, except that this time we're going to be dealing with riot shield enemies as the special enemy type. There's not too many of them. There's only maybe 3 or 4 of them total throughout the wave, but they are quite annoying because they will pretty much run right up to you. You can't break through their riot shield very easily. I also ran all the way over there to try to shoot down that helicopter when it landed, and it didn't really do much. So at some point here, I know they're going to be able to plant the bomb because I was just being, I guess, inattentive or just running away to focus on other targets. So let's see. Here's our first riot shield enemy. So with the riot shields, they're very good at blocking damage. And you're either going to need to shoot under them while they're standing up, or use an explosive on them, or run around behind them. So at some point here, they managed to sneak in and plant a bomb because they were purely focusing on trying to plant the bomb instead of trying to kill me. So, smart decision by the enemies for once, but thankfully we realized that they had planted the bomb, and my partner ran over to help me here because they had stopped spawning at his point. So we only had a couple enemies left. I think the riot shield might have been the only one left at this time. So he's able to kill the riot shield. He, of course, quickly disarms the bomb because that's a little bit more of a priority. I think if any of them go off, you automatically fail. Thankfully, that never happened because we did this first try. And now we're just rearming for the final wave. So the final wave is, of course, going to be the most difficult because, as you might expect, we're going to be defending all 3 points at once, and we can only have one more bomb be planted. Alright, so we're now on to wave number 6, the final wave. On this one, you definitely have to focus a lot on using your equipment, using your sentry guns. You can try to blow up helicopters, but it's not necessarily going to be all that helpful to you. But for the most part, it's just defending the 3 points, using your sentry guns and everything as much as possible. Your special enemy on this round is going to be at least 1 Juggernaut. There might have been 2 total. I don't particularly remember. So we're setting up sentry guns here. I've got my kind of destroyed one as well as my other one here at C. I also pop out some armor here just so I have it as an extra sort of add-on if needed. I believe he had an ammo box as his special ability because I think we might have been both playing as Assault because I don't think Recon gets that ability. We were playing as Recon later on. So anyway, we have an armored car coming in. I'm able to kill a few enemies on that. I think I also might have forgotten to fully refill all my ammo at the end of the previous round, which definitely made this a little bit trickier. So just don't do what I did and make sure that you always get more ammo. But for the most part, the enemies aren't too bad to deal with because they often funnel into small areas to where you can put a turret up, and as long as you're watching your back and making sure they don't sneak in on you from behind, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So I was running mostly between B and C here. He was running between A and B. And that one enemy nearly got away up there. They're also tossing tons of grenades, so you have to worry about that. I don't think any riot shields attack, but there is at least one juggernaut, which spawned right here, and actually managed to down me. But he came over to revive me right here, so I didn't have to use my self-revive yet. Had to use that one later. Or no, I did use my self-revive so that the juggernaut wouldn't kill him, and I managed to finish it off with the last bit of ammo I had in the magazine. So take this minigun that he's carrying, and I no longer have my self-revive, but that's okay. I managed to shoot down a helicopter here, which was pretty nice. And now we're just going to run back over to point C, where they have managed to plant a bomb. But at this point, the Juggernaut is down, and there aren't really any more enemies. I'm also completely out of ammo here, so that was not really the best timing for that to happen. Another helicopter's flying in. You do get like over a minute with the bomb, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. End up getting this AK-looking rifle, and I'm able to kill the first couple of enemies. Now, there's not that many left, but they're all pretty much hiding out over here at C. I don't think there were any more on the other points, so he was able to come over here and start to help. So we disarm the bomb here. That's 3 bombs, so we can't let him plant any more. Last few enemies are hiding out inside the building with me. They do manage to take me down, but they are kind of distracted here, just sort of standing here staring at me, thankfully. I wish the game would let you melee or something while you're in last stand, but it doesn't. So they're going to end up killing me off here, and that's going to allow me to spectate my partner. So he's going to kill off the last few enemies here, and of course now that I'm trying to record this through GarageBand, of course now that's also screwing up and having problems recording all of the audio so far during this, because of course nothing's allowed to go right when I try to do anything related to Modern Warfare 2, because that's entirely how this game has been so far. It should make for a fun story video when the full-blown Platinum Trophy video comes out at some point in the future. But anyway, we complete the objective, we get our 3 stars, so apparently that first one does not count. Took us about 20 minutes, so not too bad, and we're off to the last one now. Alright, we are now on to Low Profile, the third and final Spec Ops mission that we will need to complete. So this one is not particularly hard to get 3 stars on once you sort of understand how to play it, but we did end up taking a few tries to get 3 stars on it just because we didn't really know what path to use at first. We weren't going for the stealth trophy on our first attempt or anything like that. We were just trying to beat it with the 3 stars. So at every single time you play it, it forces you to go through this little intro sequence where you just stand inside of the plane for a few moments, and then we parachute out. So on our successful run, at least for the 3-star run, we headed for Objective C first. So I would always land up on top of this little satellite dish thing, and for some reason it's really buggy with the enemies down here. You can shoot them, and sometimes it just won't even hit them. I guess they'll kind of hear it, but only certain areas they can actually be targeted. So if you want a really good run, you kind of want to wait until the objective spawns inside of the building that I'm currently standing on, because I would always just stand up here, call out where the enemies were, snipe anything that got in the way, and along with that, he would run into the building and grab the objective pretty quickly. So it's not too hard to get the 3 stars on, like I said, once you sort of get your strategy. By the way, your goal on this mission is you're running around this little village, and you're just trying to find, like, 3 different pieces of nuclear material or something, or dirty bombs. And you use, like, an app on your smartphone in this to detect exactly where they are, which is kind of hilarious. So I did end up killing a few enemies there that might not have been required, but again, it didn't really matter if we were that stealthy here. Our only goal was to get through this as quickly as possible. So now we're going to run across the bridge, and that truck is actually going to come into play later. It's got a piece of intel in it. The intel is the last trophy we got once we knocked out all the actually difficult stuff, because the intel was easy, just took a little bit of extra time, so we decided to save that one for last because it was simple enough. So I managed to double headshot that pair of enemies, so I'll be back with you guys as soon as we get to our next objective. So for Objective B, we've run pretty much up on top of this hill, so we have a good overlook at position B. There's going to be usually one guy that's walking around on the road down there, but you kind of want to be careful with him. I think I ended up killing him here, but you might not want to do that purely because, one, he's really far away, and two, the game has a habit of sending a vehicle around the map that can see him and detect you. Now, again, we're not going for a stealth run here, but stealth does make the game easier. So we're going to go to the building, and we're pretty much just going to try to clear it out as quickly as possible. This is not the building with traps in it, that's building A, even though I probably thought that B had traps in it at some point. So we're just going to clear out the handful of enemies in here, and at some point he is going to locate the explosive. So simple enough, just have one player, if you're just trying to speed run it, have one player defend the inside of the building, and he finds it. So at this point, no, actually we did not end up suiciding ourselves here, even though we could have, and it probably would have made it just a little bit easier. So we're going to end up killing all the enemies, and now we're going to run on over to position A, which is across the water near the water tower. So I will be back as soon as we get over there. Alright, so we're over at Building A, and I sniped the first enemy that's hiding out on the roof. We didn't actually go up the water tower for this one because, again, stealth doesn't really matter here. It can make things a little bit easier, but we didn't end up doing it that way. We end up sniping these two guys. I think we actually got a synchronized shot here. And then we're going to go into the building. Now, again, Building A is the most challenging one to get through just in general because it has, one, it has a lot of enemies in it, but two, it has these tripwires everywhere. Now, you can see them pretty easily, but if you set them off, not only will it pretty much immediately alert all the enemies to your position, but it will sometimes down you instantly, so you do have to be kind of careful with that. So at this point, we're just looking around the building, trying to figure out where our objective is. It pretty much always spawns on the second floor in this building from what we could find from all of our runs. There was a trap on the staircase that I somehow didn't end up dying from, I guess because I ducked away fast enough. So on the second floor, there is another trap right there. That one might actually be like a machine gun or something. And this room is also filled with traps, and it looks like, oh, well, actually, I got killed there. And we both got killed in action, so then we ended up having to redo that whole part. So we were definitely worried here that we weren't going to have enough time, but thankfully this mission is pretty generous on time. You have 15 minutes, which isn't too bad, so I am just going to cut ahead until we get back to that building. Alright, so I'm going to try to snipe this guy from pretty far away, but my partner beats me to it, which is totally fine. Just as long as we kill the enemies and beat this in time, that's literally all that matters. We want those stars, and we want to never, ever have to play Spec Ops again, at least until I possibly do this game on the PS4 at some point. I'm honestly less and less likely to do so just after how many issues I've run into trying to platinum this game on PS5, just between veteran causing problems and the video causing problems while doing the Spec Ops, which had already caused lots of problems. We will see. I think there's still a good chance I will do it because it's not that long of a platinum, but it has not been a fun experience, and I'm definitely not looking forward to doing it a second time if I decide to. It'll probably be a little ways down the line because, again, this just hasn't been pleasant. The only good thing is that the PS4 version will auto-pop the Intel trophy once I pick up one piece of Intel, so thankfully I will not need to find all of them again. Obviously, that wasn't a difficult trophy. It only took us like 20 minutes once we were wrapping this up, but still, it saves 20 minutes, so it is what it is. It's a positive for sure. So he's going to be looking around, trying to find the last radiation target, and I'm going to sit here on the stairs and camp it out and kill anything that runs up, because we probably set off the alarm at some point, so we have to be pretty careful here. We don't want to go down again, because if we go down a second time, it's probably not going to leave us with enough time to be able to get the 3 stars, because, like I said before, it's 15 minutes for this mission. So at this point, he manages to find the objective and go down. So at that point, I just decide to let this enemy kill me because he had already picked up the objective. So when this enemy kills us, it'll allow us to reset right here. And now we just have to reach the extraction point. So the extraction point is a bit of a run from here, but position A is generally the best to go for last when you're trying to do this quickly, just because it's the closest to the extraction point. We do have a few enemies here that we have to deal with, and one of them actually does manage to down me. But he manages to kill that enemy, and I believe he's going to be able to revive me here because he had gotten ahead of me and was hiding out around this wall right here. So we're going to let him revive me, and then we're going to continue our run to the objective. Alright, so we reached the flare in the sand here, and that tells us that we're at the end of the level. But we also have quite a few enemies attacking us here, so we do need to be kind of careful because the helicopter that's supposed to come in and help us wasn't immediately there and wasn't immediately killing stuff. So it's mostly just hiding out on this side of the dune and waiting for the helicopter to arrive. We're just killing anything that manages to get up close to us. For the most part, it's not much of a problem because not too many enemies are going to get in our way, but it's definitely good to just be ready and waiting here, and don't let your guard down just because you're at the end of the mission is what I'm trying to get at with that. So eventually, after maybe like 30 seconds here, the helicopter is going to land. I attempt to snipe a few people, do manage to pick that one off from pretty long range, even though it really wasn't required. And we're just going to go ahead and board the helicopter. He's going to get on shortly after me, and at this point, they're just going to congratulate us on a mission well done, and we are going to get our 3 stars, and that's going to be it for 3-starring Spec Ops missions, but that is certainly not the hardest trophy. There's still a much more difficult final trophy to go. Well, technically 2 more trophies, but only one of them is actually difficult. Alright, so now we're off to the worst trophy in the Spec Ops mode. We have to complete the low-profile mission, well, not the entire mission, we just have to find the 3 radioactive devices without setting off an alarm. That is much easier said than done because of the random behavior of the enemies in this mission compared to, say, stealth missions in the older Call of Duty games where they were generally pretty consistent. In this case, we have to be very careful because the enemies will spawn all over the place, the objectives can be in different places, so it's much more randomized. So it took us a good hour to get through this trophy, and we ended up deciding on going to point C first, because this allowed us to make sure that the objective was in the building that I always land on, and if it wasn't there, we could just wipe and reset. And this was just the easiest way for us to do it, in all honesty. There's probably other better strategies, and a lot of people will say to go to point A first, but this ended up working for us, so we ended up relying on this particular strategy. So we clear out the couple of enemies on top of this building, and pretty quickly after, he's able to find the objective. So while I'm up on top of the building, I'm just, of course, calling out the locations of potential enemies, killing anything that might just be getting in the way. We figure out that it is in this building, or actually, no, this might have been the one run where we successfully found it in the other building, so I think it was the one time where things were a little bit different. So my partner is now on the building with me. You might have just caught a brief glimpse of him there. So he's about to go jump into the other building. The Juggernaut is up there. I'm pointing at him right now. You definitely don't want to alert him because, well, he's going to kill you pretty quickly if you do and you're not careful about it. Though we did have one kind of funny time where he actually climbed onto the building I'm currently standing on, but he couldn't figure out that I was standing above him on top of this little radar dish thing, so he never found me, and I just sort of stood up there and shot him a few times, so that was kind of hilarious. So you have 2 enemies down there that I just pointed out. You don't necessarily need to kill them, and he is going to look for a way in on top of the building. Now, one of the main strategies when you're doing this is that you have to make sure you have an explosive equipped, and as soon as you pick up an object, any of the 3, you just immediately suicide so that all the enemies despawn. That is by far the best way to get through this, because as you can see, there are quite a few enemies in that building. That's the other thing that it took us a while to learn, is that you have that pulse ability if you're a recon class character. So that pulse ability will temporarily show you where all the enemies are nearby, so that was wildly helpful with figuring out our strategies for getting into buildings. So at some point here, he's just basically looking around, trying to figure out how he wants to get in. As you can see, there's some enemies on the other side of the building that we have to be careful about. I'm considering sniping these 2. I can't remember if he ended up killing one of them and I just had to snipe the other one. Now, the enemies are allowed to hear you. That is one thing about this. They are allowed to hear you. They just aren't allowed to set off any alarms. Sometimes they will sort of start looking for you, like you'll hear them say, you know, is there something there? And that is actually okay. As long as they don't sound an alarm, it doesn't matter if they kind of hear you or have some idea that you're there. So you don't necessarily have to be perfect, you just can't really be fully spotted and that you can't have the alarm go off. That's basically what I'm getting at with this. So he uses another pulse, drops into the building, and of course this is the building where we're less experienced with it. But eventually he is able to locate the objective inside of it. And at that point, we're just going to suicide ourselves, and then we will be good to go for the second objective. So I guess that we did end up alerting the enemies to some degree, but they never sounded the alarm, so I was just able to snipe both the ones down there. And he's still looking around, still looking for the target. There's another enemy that comes out that I think I tried to shoot but missed several times. And then right as that happens, we're able to kill ourselves to forward the objective. No alarms went off, so we were okay. So about 5 minutes in, but successful so far. So that's going to respawn us into the building, and we're going to head on over to Objective B next. Now with Objective B, there's just that one pair of enemies that we're going to have to kill along the road, and otherwise we're just going to go up toward the side of B. B is probably the easiest of the three because it doesn't have any traps or anything in it or no wandering enemies. So there's the enemies. We're just going to snipe them. We're both going to be there ready and waiting just in case the bullet doesn't go through both targets. So B is relatively easy overall, but it took us a while to perfect a strategy for it, and even then there's still definitely some RNG related to it, because it kind of depends on if the enemies manage to see you early, or if they manage to hear you, come into the room with you. It can happen sometimes, and it did sometimes ruin runs. So our best strategy we found was to climb up to the rooftop here, and you're going to see those two enemies down there. We synchronized killing both of them because they detect you almost instantly if you pop your head up, so you have to be very careful with that, and you have to pretty much immediately get rid of both of them. Now from that point, there's a couple other enemies on the top floor that are in different rooms up there, but thankfully the intel was literally in the room, or the radioactive device was literally in the room that we landed in, so we were able to grab it and immediately suicide, so there were no problems. So now all the enemies have despawned, and we're going to make our way over to position A. For this one, we are going to want to climb up the water tower first, because that's going to give you a good vantage point to start sniping enemies, so I'll see you guys back there. So a lot of the strategies for this mission will have players landing on top of the water tower from the beginning, and taking out A first because it has all the traps. And I can completely understand that strategy because with all the traps, it's very easy to accidentally screw up. There's a lot of enemies here that are definitely a little bit more on the inconsistent side. So it's perfectly fine if you want to take this one out first, but it's up to you. So up here, we're going to sort of work together to snipe the enemies on the roof up here. I did miss several shots, but we do end up taking them all out. There's usually 3 on top of that roof. Then you're going, and at some point they actually, it's not that they detected us, but they were kind of moving around some more, and we just ended up deciding to suicide just to be safe here. So back on top of the water tower, we're going to try that again, hopefully with a little bit less failure. So there's always going to be a few enemies up on top of the roof. Like I said, it's usually 3. And once they go down, there's that group of 2 enemies right there. So usually we would snipe them together, or we would snipe one of them and then kill the other one pretty much immediately after, have both our rifles there. Usually 2 enemies will walk around that corner and into the side of the building, but they weren't here this time, so they must have been on the other side of the building or something like that. So, like I said, it can be kind of inconsistent, and that's part of what made this trophy kind of annoying, is that it is a lot more inconsistent than many of the other missions like this throughout Call of Duty. So I'm just sort of scouting the area, making sure that no other enemies are going to pop up on us while we fly over to it, because we're going to parachute over there. And the rapid speed at which you parachute over there is kind of hilarious. Like, you jump off and you immediately start falling, and then you can just basically launch forward. So at this point, we are going to use our pulse devices and see where the enemies are. So this time we finally got a good spawn with the enemies. There's exactly 1 in each room, pretty much. Or there's 1 in each of like 2 of the rooms, and then there's another one that's coming up the staircase, actually. So you can see that one down below us was coming up the staircase. And then there's another one that I think on this attempt, or maybe it was a different attempt, came up the outside staircase, which doesn't usually happen. But sometimes they will climb up the outside staircase and try to come up to this roof. So when that happens, just be careful about it and be ready to kill them quickly. So it did happen this time, but we got rid of him pretty much instantly and no one else hurt us, so we were good to go. So once again, the main issue here, aside from the randomness, is all the traps. And you have to be very careful, because if you set off a trap, you're pretty much going to instantly fail and pretty much be completely screwed and have to restart from the beginning. When this game first came out, it was possible to just restart from checkpoint, And if you did that, it wouldn't actually fail this particular trophy back when the game first came out. Supposedly, that's according to the guide. I don't know how true that was. So at this point, I'm just trying to figure out which room the object is going to be in, and we're pretty sure it's going to be in this one on the left. So that one has several traps and one enemy inside of it. So he is going to jump down in a second, and I'm just looking around trying to figure out which enemies are on which floor. So the pulse device goes off, and he prepares to jump in. There is a trap on the staircase, so be very careful about that one, because it's very easy to accidentally fall into, and therefore have to restart. So we see that one enemy right there that he kills. All the others are either in the rooms, there might be one in the hallway below us, but we did finally get a good series of spawns by the enemies. So he is about to crawl up and around the corner here. I think I was probably waiting to get my pulse back here just so that we would have it as backup. So he's just hiding out on the stairs. I'm checking down below to make sure that no other enemies appear. And there's no enemies right then and there, so I'm ready to use my pulse again. And this time, as we can see, it's still just one enemy pretty much in each room, which is the optimal setup we found for this particular objective. And here, I actually decided to take on a different strategy and walk down that staircase and into the hallway because they actually spawned a claymore in that hallway, which is not something we've had happen before. So that was really, really unfortunate. I don't know why that had to happen this time. Like this time of all times, because it was going to be our successful run, and it does end up being our successful run. So I sneak on over to disarm the tripwire, so at least we have that out of the way. And for the claymore, it took me a while to remember this, but you can actually approach them from behind and disarm them, which is really, really helpful. I mean, this is literally the only time this ever happened, so it wasn't as helpful as it could have been, but at least it did end up working out. So I'm just still scanning the rooms. We're trying to figure out what to do about the claymore, if we want to just try to suicide and retry it, because we've come so far. But I crawl up to it, I am able to disarm it and stow it away, so now I have the objective, or have the object, I don't know why I called it an objective. And at this point, it's just still one enemy per room. We know that the target is in this particular room. So he is going to break into the room, and I'm going to hide at the end of the hallway and just be prepared to kill enemies as they enter, because they will hear the shots go off and will go to investigate. Because that's actually how suppressors work. They are not fully quiet. So, an enemy is running out of this room, but he immediately disarms it and then runs into a tripwire within a second of that happening. But thankfully, we were successful. And now we have the final trophy, which is easy enough. It's just find 20 intel pieces. There are 20 in this mission, 20 in the denied area mission, and there are 10 in Defender Mount Zaya, and I'm sure there's others in other missions as well. So basically, just follow a video guide, and you will easily be able to find all of them. On this map, a couple of them are up on top of buildings that you're going to have to parachute to, either by landing on them from the start or by jumping from a high building such as a radio tower. But overall, it's easy enough. Just follow a guide and you'll be able to find all of them really without any major issues. So our final objective is in this one room, and of course you can be as loud as you need to. You can just kill enemies however you want. Time doesn't matter. Deaths don't matter. Just find all of the intel and you are good to go. So our last piece of intel is right there, and we get the trophy. So, thank you guys for watching. See you guys back here next time for what should be the final part of Modern Warfare 2.